Hello and welcome to another episode of Lockdown Dads. I'm James Miller, author of Dads Don't Babysit, editor of workingdads.co.uk and father of two children. And I am joined as ever by...
Ian Dinwiddie, the founder of Inspiring Dads, a coaching business that helps stressed dads to balance work and fatherhood. This week, we're really pleased to be joined by a new guest, someone who's a friend of both of us. It's Nicki Seignot of The Parent Mentor. Nicki, welcome to the show.
Thanks, great to be here.
Nicki, we start off with a question that's sort of increasingly important and perhaps and hopefully won't be a question that we sort of abandon in the next few months as we come out of lockdown. But how are you?
Well, how am I? Yeah, I'm good. I think just so glad to be able to get up in daylight now. I think facing this lockdown versus the previous lockdown, it's been really interesting, and just that sense of light. And we're heading towards spring, and there's hope in the air, and people are getting vaccinated. God, what a difference! From only a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I think that light thing. Actually, I noticed that this morning. Funny enough, I had the conversation with Lisa this morning, my wife, and I said it's lighter. It's becoming lighter at 6:15, 6:30. By quarter to 7, it was bright sunlight. So I don't know why I hadn't noticed before, but yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, sense of optimism. How about you, James? How's your sense of optimism this week?
I'll take your word for it that it's like 6:45.
That means you've got the surface
noticed myself. I mean, mainly this week I've been woken at 7:20 every morning by the goddamn cat banging the door. But I've noticed the light. I've just noticed the increasingly exciting and inventive swear words I've used to describe the cat as the week has gone on, and it happens every day. How am I this week? Yeah, all right. I mean, we mentioned my back last week, and I don't want to go on about my back, but it does get you down. It's quite annoying, this constant sort of nagging pain. But on the other side, as Nicki says, the weather. I mean, this is one of the big themes coming out of this podcast, right? Is that when the weather turns, it just makes everybody a bit happier. Yeah. And then obviously, by the time this goes out, the kids will be back at school. I mean, that is the big one, isn't it? And that, I think, will have a fundamental effect on everybody's mental health, parents and children alike. I have to say, this week was really dragging. On Tuesday, I was like, God, is it only Tuesday? Because the finishing line of the kids going back to school was in sight. And like on Monday, we're like, okay, it's the last week of homeschool. And then by Tuesday afternoon, it was like, how can it still be just the last week of homeschool? Why is it not over yet? So it feels like it's really dragged.
You guys have had World Book Day this week, though. Haven't your kids all been dressing up?
Yes, Arthur Dent, really good outfit, Arthur Dent. Very happy with that one from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's just pajamas and a dressing gown. So I was like, yes, excellent. I mean, there was a lot of parents on the WhatsApp group going, I thought we were going to avoid World Book Day this year, but it's come round anyway. Also quite a lot of performative, oh no, it's so awful. And then that child turns up in the best outfit you've ever seen. So yeah, I don't know. It felt like it's dragged this week, but I think the fact that there is something at the end of it is the big positive, and obviously we'll see how that all pans out next week. Like I say, I think it'll affect people's mental health quite profoundly, and I hope I pretty much for the better all round, but we'll have to wait and see, I guess, because it will be a bit weird, the transition back to school. We try and talk about ourselves as opposed to, the classic parent thing of, well, my children have been doing this. Like, yes, but how am I? But I think very much this week and next week, parents' mental health will be very much bound up with how their children cope with going back, getting tested and all that sort of stuff. How are you this weekend?
Yeah, similar, I think. Looking forward to things. I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to, not apologising. I was thinking about this. I sent an email this morning at 7:30 because my cat, actually, we could swap cats because Sasha the cat, he wakes me up at 6 o'clock. So 7:20, I would die for 7:20, 6 o'clock. That's why I'm always tired. And that's my tip later on about being tired. But we'll come to that in a minute. I'm really looking forward to not apologising for stuff I haven't yet done. So just having a bit more time, a bit more flow, thinking about things properly, rather than people chasing me for things I've said I'll do with them. A lot of it is great opportunities and collaboration. But yeah, sometimes it's like, thank you for chasing me. I apologise. I'm behind on everything. It's almost like it needs to be the out of office. So I'm looking forward to I might be kidding myself. I might just I'll find new ways of procrastinating and not doing it next week, but with no excuses. So that's quite exciting. Other thing we're looking forward to, thinking about Easter and when we can meet outside with people outside of your household and swapping Christmas presents. with my dad. So my son is quite excited. It's like, has Grandad got me this? It's like, yeah, he's got you this. It's like, can I have it soon? It's like, yeah, kind of. Yeah, we're gonna arrange to meet kind of halfway between London and Somerset somewhere, outdoorsy, and exchange presents and say hello. So that's something to look forward to for Easter.
We kind of did that at Christmas. We at Christmas Day we decided what we were going to do was each household was going to open the other people's presents on camera. So we did, because we didn't want to have a load of presents sitting around in Christmas wrapping paper. So I said, okay, so we opened all Granny's presents for her. And a bit like the Ian Stone in Derbyshire, you know, where they used to put kind of money in the underneath the water, where we putting presents out for people to pick up and take back. Yeah, we thought about opening. We didn't get around to it. So we have quite a few things wrapped up. Just looking a little bit sad.
Yeah. No, it's something to look forward to, isn't it? Something else. Looking forward to anything else next week, Ian? Looking forward to anything else?
I'm meeting up with someone. There's someone on this show actually, and it's not Nicki. Hey, last time I forgot this. So we are.
Back to school goes smoothly anyway. We need to get that sorted out. But yes, that'll be a side of normality, won't it?
By the time this goes live, then we will be almost at the stage where we'll be a couple of days. I think we're strategizing, aren't we, in the park somewhere?
Yes, the future of this podcast depends on that. Anyway, let's see. That all depends on the back to school going well. I think that's not confirmed yet. Exactly. Anyway, let's talk about the path. Let's talk about the feature called the path, which I'm really making quite an effort to get it. Bringing the path back and actually giving it its proper name in the last few weeks, even though it doesn't really mean anything and doesn't really matter. Tell us about your path, Nicki. Tell us about why are you on this podcast? Essentially, we are.
And I've got to justify my position, haven't I?
Too late now.
How did you come to find that? How did you come to do what you do, but particularly then move on to perhaps the realization that dads were a part of the.
Yeah, good point. Well, I guess. So my kids are considerably older than yours. So I'm obviously a lot older than you two. So my kids are kind of 24 and 22, and. I took my maternity leave in sort of late 1990s, and it was just a number of things kind of struck me when I was doing it. One was the certainty of, before I had a baby, it was going to change nothing. I was going to have this baby and carry on, pop them in the nursery, and my life and career would carry on. And of course, it fundamentally changed. Everything changed. And in the 90s, the pattern of life was that typically women went back to work, probably part-time, while our husbands carried on. And actually what that meant was we kind of sabotaged our careers in a way. We decided we were doing other things. So children and careers, yes, we wanted both, but actually one of them probably flatlined a bit, certainly in my case initially. And there was a sense of, actually that was the pattern, how it was really. And all around me, I could see women, and we'll come on to talk about dads in a minute, women making choices about what was possible in life and career, but not really realizing they were making a choice. And businesses were falling out of love with the women too. And, these people were graduates, high potential people. Then they came back and somehow the whole thing was just not working. And nobody was really talking about this huge transformation that had gone on for them. And actually, what do you want out of work and career now? And it may be okay just to coast for a while, but when you're ready, let's get your career back up and running because we need your experience. And there were plenty of organisations wanted to do coaching with us, and we said, majority of people having babies were in their early 30s, and there wasn't the financial appetite to be investing in external executive coaching. And at the time, I was doing a master's in coaching and mentoring. So I set up a program at the time called Mum to Mum. And that was getting mums to talk to other mums inside the organisation about that kind of highly personal journey that was going on in parallel with coming back to work, because nobody was having that conversation with them in terms of a line manager conversation. And interestingly, at that point, I had one of my grads, Phil, within the organisation. He was a buyer. And he was a single dad, and he approached me. He said, I know you're doing Mum to Mum. He said, and I've always regarded myself as a bit of an Asda mum because I'm a single dad. Will you have me as one of your mentors? And I went, God, yes, of course. So I had a returning mum who's actually a single parent, and he was there as a single dad, and she wanted to work through making sense of, coming back to work full time. How do I boundary all this stuff? How do you manage as a single parent? And he had 2 small boys. So actually there were loads of synergies between them and a really interesting kind of pairing. And the whole, that program was set up in 2011 and it became the inspiration for a business, and it's now the parent mentor. And I work in businesses and organizations to say, invest in your returning talent. Why would you not want to keep people's careers on track and have a conversation with them that is enabling, as opposed to just ignoring the fact they're taking time out and, oh, you're back, let's carry on. So I wrote this book behind me, Mentoring New Parents at Work, and it's not an advert for Childline. That's my nephew Oscar on the cover. Who's 12 and very happy. It's really a reminder, when you employ parents, you don't just employ this person on their own. There's somebody else always in the background. And if they're okay, we're okay. If they're not okay, do you know what? It's going to be a pretty grotty day. And but as I said to both of you, actually what that book did was a bit of a disservice. I've called it Mentoring New Parents at Work. In reality, I suppose the confession is it's a book about maternity. It's not really about paternity. And it's a how-to guide for businesses and organizations to say, start mentoring, use your own people to help each other come back. That's the right thing to do. And yes, there's a chapter about, other versions of return. So we talk about career breaks, we talk about dads in that. But I found I was working within other organizations, and we were having sort of parental mentoring programs. The majority were maternity, but then increasingly dads were coming, and dads were completely different. And I, rightly so, would be going through this framework of leaving the business and coming back to work after maternity leave. And actually the dads in the room, I thought, oh God, this is invisible. I'm not talking to them about what was going on for them. And the maternity journey is not the paternity journey, is it? I mean, you both know that, right?
Yeah, certainly know one side of that. Yeah, it doesn't look very similar, I have to say.
Well, that's what we're kind of physically producing the baby, but and it's that whole disconnect of, how do we engage dads in the process, and is it the right thing to do to make it purely about mums? It's problematic, isn't it? And the language was different. And actually what dads were saying in the sessions with us when we did it was, actually, I found some things about maternity I hadn't thought about before from my wife's perspective. That's actually been quite valuable. Now let me share you my story. And then of course the women in the room were going, oh my God, selfishly, we've never thought about it from your perspective. I mean, it sounds obvious talking to you two now, but it was quite revolutionary at the time.
No, yeah, it's I think it's really interesting because it's not, in a sense, I know we talk about how it's a long time ago, but actually we're only talking about a generation of children since Mum to Mum was an obvious name for a return to work sort of coaching program. And it's relatively recently that there's been a much greater understanding about how supporting dads helps everyone, and how it changes the kind of landscape. And I suppose, was there, apart from Phil becoming a mentor, were there any other moments, Nicki, for you where you thought, actually, there's more, it's got to be bigger, it's got to be broader than this, or at least it's got to reference other parts of society?
Yeah, good shout. There was a pivotal moment. I was working with one client in the financial services, and we had actually 30%, so we had a pilot group of 12 mentors, 30% of whom were dads. So this was a big change. They were doing a great job to make it a very inclusive program. And one of the dads sat there, and as part of what I do, I've got like a sort of mentoring cards, sort of visual cards that demonstrate the journey. And so as part of the icebreaker, I said to my everybody, right, okay, pick a card that says something about, where you are on the journey and how you're feeling. And this dad, who's first-time dad, he picked up a card, and it was a picture, actually it's my brother on top of a mountain somewhere in France, and he held the card up and he said, this was me, and I used to go mountain climbing, cycling, the world was my oyster. And he said, and I don't know where he is anymore. And he literally broke down in the session. And in that moment, and I said to my client afterwards, I said, if you are in any doubt about the power of what you're doing, it's in the room right now. We have to talk to dads too. And I think many organizations, there's a thirst to homogenize things and talk about parents, but mums, mums don't necessarily want to be known as parents. Dads don't want to be known as parents. We're mums, we're dads. And I think we do people a disservice where we homogenize and we don't see that individual journey. And, we want to feel that our journey is unique and special to us because it is. And we do people a disservice by just grouping them together as one thing. And, when he did that, I just thought, well, it was just so powerful. And simultaneously with that, a mutual colleague of mine connected me up with Hanson Lee at Daddy Life. And that's where he and we sort of met in London and started talking about possibilities of mentoring. And then we created Dad Connect, which is where we started talking to you guys, really. And then it grew a life all of its own, and it felt absolutely the right thing to do. And yeah, so for me, that it was in that moment, and I thought, I just never thought about it. And hearing him and him feeling okay to just bring that into the room in that moment was incredibly powerful.
Can I just wind it back to a fairly stupid question? I'm good at stupid questions. What is mentoring in the first instance? What does it actually involve? I mean, I think a lot of people have an idea of what mentoring is, but that might not actually match the reality. So what's actually involved in your mentoring program? Is it sitting down talking to somebody and somebody going, well, here's how you do it? That is mentoring, basically, in a very simple definition. How does it work for you? And I suppose out of that comes the perhaps the bigger question, which is, where is the power in it? How does it work? Not, what practically does it involve? And then, why is it important?
Okay, all right. Okay, I'm going to go down my shopping list now. So I'll start with what is mentoring. I think I'm going to say the professional community, the coaching and mentoring community, is still debating over the difference between coaching and mentoring. It's just one of those that nobody's really, really, truly defined it. So I'm quite happy that actually, when we talk about mentoring, the reason why you will have a dad mentoring a dad is that you bring your experience. Okay, if we were coaching each other, if Ian was the coach to James, Ian would be keeping his own stuff, his own journey out of the picture. It would be all about James and resourcing James. If James and Ian are in a mentoring relationship, what Ian's bringing is, there are times when you may just be floundering and Ian might be saying to you, do you know what, would it be helpful if I just shared a bit about what I did in a similar situation? And it gives you permission as a mentee to either say, yes, that'd be helpful, let's hear it, or no, I'm not sure that's really what I need right now. Because sometimes mentoring is about giving advice, but it's that fine balance of, is this a good moment or is it not? Because really what we want to do is resource somebody. They've got the resources, but actually me having a bit of experience might just be helpful because I'm a bit further on than them, and where they're floundering in darkness or feeling overwhelmed, actually what the mentor offers is a bit of hope because they're a bit ahead of you, and it's okay to say, do you know what, I get it, I understand how difficult it is, I've been there, yours is slightly different, but we're kind of, I'm on this journey with you and I can help you have the conversation. So for me, mentoring is about bringing you in a really helpful way, but it's not about your journey, it's always about their journey. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I suppose that also explains another very sort of trendy term at the moment, which is reverse mentoring.
Oh yeah.
But I guess that is the same thing but turned on its head. I mean, I can see very much, because again, reverse mentoring, all right, as you said, we did a mentoring scheme, so I have a rough idea of what mentoring is. Let's face it, I was supposed to know at that point. But I can see that, the reverse mentoring is presumably you switch that on its head. So you've then got the person who is going through it, if you like, explaining to the
mentor.
Is that what you call them? But the more senior person, either in age or is then explaining that what's going on with them and how that can then feed into how the reverse mentee, if that's what you call them.
Yeah, but if you think back to when we were doing Dad Connect, there's almost reverse mentoring going on all the time, because I remember having a conversation with Tim, one of the other Dad Connect mentors, and saying that actually, when you're in a mentoring conversation with somebody and you're the mentor and you might be talking, you might be offering advice or guidance, and then you reflect on it afterwards or what they've had to say, and you think, actually, what I might be giving out all this advice, am I actually taking my own advice? And in every mentoring relationship, we are changed by it too. So it is a reciprocal thing as you go through it. I think we'd be foolish to assume that in a mentoring relationship, the mentor learns nothing. You learn actually a lot by seeing somebody else's journey, because we have assumptions about how it's going to be. And then something will kick off and you think, oh my goodness, I hadn't thought of that. And for me, I've had the opportunity, one of the big pluses about lockdown is what we're doing now and be able to work digitally. And one of my programs that I ran as a physical pilot has just gone global because we can. And we were having mentoring conversations online. And there was a sweet spot moment, you're saying to me what mentoring is, where one of the mentors was having a conversation with, it was a kind of a role play, but not quite role play, and just having a go kind of mentoring skills. And she said to her mentee, who was struggling with going back to work, she said, look, you and I both know about the nature of this context and how this business works and the level of change. And in that moment, it gave the mentee permission to go to the same place. And it was a moment of kind of just liberation for both of them to feel actually we're equals in this. And a mentor and mentee doesn't look like that. A mentor and mentee comes like this. We meet as mutual learners, as equals. And it was a really brilliant moment. And I think mentoring uses a lot of coaching skills. So if we're a great mentor, that means we can listen without judgment. We can ask some really meaty questions that make somebody stop and think. But we just hold the space for growth, I think, really. Growth of ourselves as well as them.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that about it working both ways. Let's face it, anybody who's ever listened to any episodes of this podcast has probably heard me say good enough is good enough. But it was certainly while during that Dad Connect stuff that I said it to my mentee, and then he was like, what? And I was like, oh, right. Suddenly you realize that there's power in this. It was just it's a phrase that I know very well and use all the time. And you suddenly realize, okay, other people don't know this. You understand the power of good enough is good enough, which is why I repeat it all the flipping time on this podcast.
And I share it as well. So I think it's important to do that. And I think it's going back to sort of the dad side of things, Nicki, and that sort of transition to being to involving men more in these kind of conversations around parenting. I think I find it really fascinating. And I struggle with it a little bit myself when I was conceptualizing it. This idea that it's better to treat men and women, mums and dads, as separate entities rather than grouping them together as parents, because I think that the experience of paternity and maternity, not just in terms of the dynamics of how much time you have off, but also some of the pressures and the societal pressures are so very different. What kind of things are you seeing from your clients in particular that might suggest that there's an appetite for change within business as how we look at how we support men and women and mums and dads?
I think, this has probably been repeated so many times on Lockdown Dads. I think the fact that we've had no choice but to work remotely has just blasted all the myths around, oh, you can't do this job from home, completely out of the water. And to that extent, it's probably been an absolute gift for people who want to work remotely. And I've always had this thing that it took me to have children to respect my work-life balance and to want to work flexibly. Why do we give away all that discretionary time? And why does it have to be a parenting thing to want to work flexibly? So I think in a way, the pandemic has given everyone the gift of being able to say, I have a right to a life away from work. It might be about parenting, or it might be I've got a passion for cross bikes or whatever that is, but that's okay. So I think in that respect, it's one of the upsides of the lockdown, that I think it's just given Some people, so it depends on the business you're in, just that flexibility. And, you know, those line managers who, and notwithstanding the policy that says, yeah, we have a flexible working policy, but those line managers who would just operate in denial of what that policy was, have now been found wanting, because actually they're the ones who've had to work digitally and remotely. You know, I think there's no doubt that people's productivity in many respects has gone up. In fact, but the trouble is that the hybrid working has almost overboiled, isn't it? Exactly the point you're making at the beginning of this call, you're talking about you getting 6 o'clock and cracking on in your dressing gown. The work days just sort of bled over a little bit. And that's not a good thing. And interestingly, you know, I've got people coming back to the workplace now who've been on maternity leave or paternity leave, who've taken the break, but it's not been a parental leave like ever before. So they've not had a chance to network or meet other people. And going back to work is sitting in the same room on Zoom. They're not actually going back to work. And what's happened is the world of work has changed while they've been out on leave. And maybe they're not up to steam with that. And, you know, it's a bit like somebody said to me on the call yesterday, you know, you have to find out who's who in the Zoom.
Yeah.
And I thought, I love that phrase. You know, who's who in Zoom? I get it. Because, you know, when you're faced with this wall of people, how do you begin to find out the influences and you know, where do I fit? Where do I speak? What do I not speak? All the gaffes that we did at the beginning 12 months ago, we've worked through that, but they're coming on thinking, oh my God, I don't know how this works.
But I think, you know, and this is not my tip this week, but I think tool up is going to be one of the tips, because I absolutely hear what Nicki's saying and she's right. But, you know, you may or may not have clocked the man from Goldman Sachs last week who said, you know, working from home is an aberration and everybody wants to get back in the office. No, they don't, mate. You know, the Prime Minister says, oh, people are going to be going back. I think there's a clash coming between those of us who know the benefits of flexible working and believe in it, and those line managers and dinosaurs who just want to put the world back as it was.
Yeah. Except I will say, as a parent with kids in their early 20s, so my 24-year-old, she is more than ready to go back to the office. So the parents think that this generation, actually, it helps us. We've got greater flexibility for the younger and I wonder if you might see a generational split here, that the younger people want to be back amongst peers in an office where there's noise and buzz around them. It's quite a different.
What they want, I don't know, won't they want flexibility around that, in the sense that they won't expected to be in an office between 9 and 5 days a week. Okay. You know, they'll expect possibly to do really long days, you know, some days, and then I don't know, you probably know better than I, but I absolutely hear that, yes, young people, it's been pretty horrific being holed up in a flat for a year and all the rest of it, and obviously want to go to the pub after work and you know, get on with doing some ridiculous office-based snogging and all the rest of it. But not your daughter. I'm sure she wouldn't.
Yeah, I was just saying, not the snogging.
She doesn't know what snogging is. But I just feel like that younger generation are going to expect some give and take. You know, they're not going to expect the boss to say, you're going to be in the office 9 to 5 or, you know, 9 to 9 in Goldman Sachs or whatever. And there'll be an expectation that, you know what, I want to go off and do 3 months snowboarding in, you know, in the Rockies. Business has to flex to accommodate that or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And I remember the reason why we're doing all of this, it's kind of, you know, this kind of big goal is that we're trying to make this better for our own kids, this next generation of people coming through. Because it's got to be better for them. We've got to have a better working environment. We've got to have a better way of living, and you know, giving away discretionary time and you know what, don't do it. Make the most of the life you've got now. And you know, that's one thing I think we taught from the pandemic, isn't it? You know, God, get on and enjoy it now, because who knows, it might be locked down again.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think those mechanics are really interesting about how you return to work. So my wife's business, they are looking at they're looking towards a 3-day-a-week in the office model. But what the bit they've struggled with is reconciling the face time that people need in the office. If you're going to be in the office, you might as well be in there with people in your team. But everyone wants to basically do the same things, which is Monday and Friday at home and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the office. That doesn't work in terms of freeing up space. You need actually more space if everyone's going to be on the same days. And how you negotiate those desires around what people want versus what the business needs, and also how to fit everyone into that office space is one of the things that they're struggling with at the moment. Because otherwise you end up with a weird model where you can't quite, nobody's really happy with it. So I don't know how exactly that'll pan out, but those are some of the pressures I think they're finding.
I think we're just going to keep talking about it and keep challenging, and just not sleepwalk back into a really bad model.
Here, I mean, that's basically what we're talking about, isn't it? I mean, I don't want to boil down your entire life's work to something very simple, Nicki, but it's basically about communication. I mean, that's what we're really talking about. I mean, that's what we're always talking about in this podcast, really. You really want to be very simplistic about it. Let's talk about tips. Who's got tips this week? Well, I want to go first because I've got a slightly one that I want to put to the panel this week. So it's not, you can knock it down.
Panel.
Tip if you want, and then it'll be the first tip to be rejected. But obviously the International Women's Day, and the theme is choose to challenge, whatever that means. That's my tip to some extent, is choose to challenge. My tip is, if you are a man, a working dad, and you walk into a room at work, imagine walking into a room at work. I mean, whoa, that'd be amazing. But in the near future, you might just be happy to be in a room at work. But if you are in that room with only one woman, or indeed only one person of color, I think you should say, there's only one woman in this room, that's not cool. And I would switch on its head, and I wonder, this is the more controversial bit, if you like, and you're welcome, if you both say this is a stupid idea, then we'll strike it from the list of tips. If you're a man and you go to the rhyme time at your local library and you're the only dad there, choose to challenge that as well, and just say, I'm the only dad here. Where are your husbands? Where are your partners? Why am I the only dad here? Is that wrong? Or is that an acceptable way to? I mean, you're not in an aggressive way. Don't go, where? You can do that if you want, but it's not going to work. I mean, that's a stupid thing to do. But I think it's okay to choose to challenge and say, hang on, where are all the other dads?
Yeah, no, I like the idea. I like the idea of it. I think you'd ruffle a few feathers, and maybe, I mean, those groups are mum-dominated groups. If you're a dad you're the only dad, can be quite tricky to break into, sort of on an emotional level. I think, James, as you probably remember as well as I do. So I'd be a little bit careful. But yeah, I think maybe extolling the virtues of what you're doing and the opportunities, and opening people's eyes to it, perhaps, that actually it's possible, and being someone who's a leader almost, and sort of saying to your male peers, actually, if you're taking leave, I'm taking leave, and isn't it this great? And it's these opportunities that it unlocks, and eulogizing the benefits, and talking about it.
Well, I tell you what, my tip is choose to challenge, but also choose how and when you choose to challenge. Perhaps there you go. See, we've refined it as a group, so I think that works. My tip. What's your tip?
So I'm going to give my tip for today. I think, it's obviously Monday's International Women's Day, isn't it? So it's very topical. There's been so much talk in the press about women go back into the 1950s in terms of all the business of what's happening in the house, and sort of parenting and housekeeping, all that sort of stuff. But so let's turn it on its head, because we do want to talk about dads in the context of today. And I think we should be saying, we're preaching to the converted. The people who listen to this podcast are already engaged, interested dads who want to talk about the stuff that we want to talk about. So my ask of them, if they're listening to this, is, that dad who's just come back from paternity leave or has been back a couple of months, just check in with him, ask him how he is. Because it's invisible to the organisation. People have probably forgotten, but just have a conversation saying, how you doing? What's happening? How's the kids? How are you? A small moment actually could mean a lot to somebody.
Yeah. Simple tips are the best one. That's a very good tip. It's nice and easy. And I think, you say it can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm reading a book. I don't read many books, and I don't read them very fast, but I've started dipping into Why We Sleep. I have got it over there. I should have brought it with me, but it's sitting a little bit out of the way. It's really, really interesting. You kind of instinctively know that it's a good thing to get enough sleep, and and that you feel better, you feel more energized the next day. But this is a little bit scary, actually. I'm only like 30 pages in. It sort of breaks down all the biological reasons why we need to sleep and the repair that it does to our brains and our bodies, and what happens to your chance of getting diabetes and problems with weight gain when you don't sleep properly. And so I think, it's very easy to burn the candle at both ends, but I think being at least being aware of the benefits and of why we sleep and why it's important to get enough sleep. I mean, different for different people, but yeah, fascinating book as well. Really, really interesting and slightly scary. So that's my tip: Why We Sleep. Nicki, thank you very much for joining us today. Can you explain where people can go to learn more, connect with you, and learn more about what you do?
So it's a very simple website, which is far easier than my name. So it's just www.theparentmentor.co.uk. So there's a whole bunch of stuff on there. If I'm honest, during lockdown, I've been a bit lighter on social media, but I am on Instagram and also Facebook. And actually, I lied, I'm not really on Facebook, so scrap that. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn, so you'll find me there. But yeah, do connect in with me there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming on and talking about the Parent Mentor, talking about mentoring generally. Thank you very much for watching and listening. We will be back next week. This has been episode number 36 of Lockdown Dads. James and I are strategizing next week, potentially looking at a season 4. Possibly it might be renamed. Who knows? Watch this space. But for the meantime, thank you very much, Nicki, and thank you very much, James. And thank you for watching and listening.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.